Feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Raw Talk.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
From Michelle Lavelle at School Choice for New Hampshire. On December 14, 2015, the presiding judge of the Stratford Superior Court, Justice Brian T. Tucker, denied the injunction brought by the New Hampshire Department of Education and the State Attorney General's office against the Croydon School Board. The NHDOE and AG claimed that 4 Croydon students would be irreparably harmed if allowed to remain at the Newport Montessori School as part of the town's school choice program. In the court's ruling, the judge said that the NHDOE previously allowed students to remain in their private schools and had advanced knowledge that the board intended to continue their program in the 2015-2016 school year, but did not take immediate action at those times. The judges denied the injunction. You can read more at schoolchoicenh.org. Gun control lobbyist Mark Kelly from Americans for Responsible Solutions and his wife, Grabby Gun Grabber Giffords, were in New Hampshire this past week to announce their new coalition, Granite State Solutions for Common Sense. The first rule of the new group, like most liberal groups, is lie. GraniteRock.com's Kimberly Moore, in reporting for Examiner.com, noted that according to a tweet from NH1's Kevin Landrigan, Kelly claimed there is 1 death every 3 days from gun violence in the Granite State. Warren points readers to the FBI's own crime statistics on homicides to refute the claim and adds how ironic it is that the organization is called Granite State when it is formed by someone from Arizona, and that they use the words common sense when they have offered 0 solutions that would actually stop gun violence. In a story titled, "After 200 Years, the Crown Would Feel at Home Here Again," former State Supreme Court Justice Chuck Douglas asks, "Where do you go to challenge illegal government decisions when the court closes you out?" China and Russia, he notes, have an approach to government responsibility that places the powers of government above and over the people. Our system is the reverse. Our 1784 Bill of Rights in Part 1, Article 8 clearly says the following: all power residing originally in and being derived from the people, all the magistrates and officers of government are their substitutes and agents and at all times accountable to them. Unfortunately, that right of accountability has been denied time and time again in recent years by court decisions making government less and less accountable to our individual citizens by closing the courthouses to taxpayers. Douglas cites a number of New Hampshire court cases to make his point. You can find the business end of that stick at GraniteRock.com. We have some post-Republican debate polling to report. The Boston Herald's New Hampshire primary poll has Trump at 26, Cruz at 12, Rubio 12, Christie 11, Bush 10, Kasich 8, Fiorina 6, Carson 5, Paul 3, and then the rest. Fiorina and Carson continue to slide while Donald Trump maintains a stranglehold on first place. The next position is a statistical tie in New Hampshire. But as of this writing, only Cruz, Trump, and Rubio stand a chance to find some separation as a result of a bump coming out of the Iowa caucus. Christie is still showing well among the RINOs, but Bush and Kasich continue to dog his heels as supporters hope the other RINOs will ignore their donors and drop their bid to join a unification movement behind just one viable invertebrate Republican. Nationally, post-debate, Trump is at 35 with Cruz in second at 18. Rubio is at 13, followed by Carson, Bush, and Christie at 6. Fiorina polls at 5, and Kasich and Paul are tied at 2.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Raw Talk.
Warning, this is not a safe space. I repeat, this is not a safe space.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Okay, back again. Last show of 2015. Should be interesting. Probably a little weird, a little crazy. We're going to bring Susan Olson in a minute to talk about some interesting adventurers from Arizona who came to visit us. But after that, we're going to open up phone lines if anybody wants to call in and pick a topic. 603-715-9689. Welcome to
after 9:30.
Program. That's what I said.
Yeah,
after 9:30. You can try calling before 9:30, but the line will be busy, and I didn't give you the other number. Good morning, Susan. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Am I the weird and crazy part, or?
No, we already started that before we even brought you on. It was weird.
I was listening to the news, and I love the term viable invertebrates.
You like that?
Because I don't think that there is such a thing.
Oh, well, there isn't really.
There's certainly invertebrates.
There are invertebrates.
But I'm not sure about the viability.
Well, it's the Republican rubber chickens, and there are a bunch of them out there, and they all want to get behind. Well, in New Hampshire, it's Chris Christie they keep talking about, but everybody's like, you get the Fergus Collins of the world spreading their fungus upon us and hoping that the spores will cause everybody to go vote for somebody with no spine. Well, that's basically the impression.
So are they spine removal spores? Is that what it is?
Spine removal spores, yes, that might be true.
Ooh, my goodness, I hadn't thought about that. Just another reason to steer clear of that guy.
Yes, sir, ma'am. Okay, so we had Mark Kelly and Gabby Gungrabber Giffords. Gabby Gungrabber Giffords. Boy, it was a lot easier to read when I did the news read than just speaking it now. Came to visit to spread their spores, so to speak, with their out-of-state money and her lobbyist husband. And so let's talk about that.
Well, first of all, any man who would use his poor, damaged wife to as a prop, or in his case, more as a human shield, is just beyond contempt. I don't know if you guys watched the WMUR clip on where Ms. Giffords was speaking, but how could anybody who cares about people believe that was anything other than just dragging this poor woman out and putting her on a box and letting her say something that she probably doesn't even necessarily comprehend? I felt so sorry for that woman. I mean, I think Mark Kelly's just a vile, disgusting piece of trash, but poor Miss Giffords, to hold her up to that sort of ridicule, I do not understand. I really don't.
Well, it is like most of the left. They always have to have a prop for their political theater.
But this poor woman, I mean, she just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time with a husband who didn't protect her, first of all, and now he's standing on her shoulders and calling himself tall and brave. Unbelievable. All of that aside,
Sort of reminds me of Terry McAuliffe.
Terry McAuliffe. Yeah, well, what are you going to do, huh? But when you think about these folks coming to Arizona, I mean, from Arizona to New Hampshire, and admitting that, of course, they came here because of the importance of the, quote, first in the nation primary and the spotlight and the cameras all being focused on here, that this was a place to get some traction, if you will. I came to New Hampshire 15 years ago, maybe, And I came here because it had all sorts of things for which I was looking. Not a lot of people, not a lot of taxes, 4 seasons, and the idea that people would just leave me alone. But the longer I've been here and the closer I have examined the political class here, I've come to the conclusion that New Hampshire, for the most part, is not only, for those who control it, a closely held near-criminal enterprise, but for the left and the Dems and the progressives, this is nothing more than a political petri dish. Well, let's go try it in New Hampshire. It's like, let's give it to Mikey, see if he likes it. All due respect, Mikey. But let's try it here and see if it works. Much like smarter balanced testing, much like all these stupid Mark Kelly adventures. They think that by coming to a little tiny state where there aren't a lot of people that would, show them out on a rail, that it gives them some sort of credibility.
Well, that's why the Free State Project chose New Hampshire, right?
I think the Free State Project, I don't know because I'm not a Free Stater, although who doesn't like the concept? I think they came here for much the same reasons that I did, because this is a place where, liberty still, to a certain degree, existed, but I think even they, on closer examination, are finding out, gee whiz, maybe this isn't such a free state. Maybe there are so few people controlling it that maybe things do have to change.
I think they discovered that you need more than 20,000 people like that to move here.
You've got to take over precincts and all sorts of organizations all the way up the ladder in order to sway control.
Yeah.
And it making this into our petri dish for liberty instead of the liberals' petri dish for oppression is almost a superhuman task. But that's basically what we're up for.
They kind of almost sort of had a chance when everybody rebelled and elected Jack Kimball chairman. But the problem was they didn't get rid of anybody else. The county chairs that sucked were still there. The other people on the e-board that sucked were still there. And we didn't get rid of the supporting cast. He didn't have any backup. Whether or not it was a learning experience for him or not to run the party as a chairman, I mean, if you could take over the Republican Party in New Hampshire, you could do a lot.
Well,
but it's very, very difficult to do.
Is the position any different than that spotlight afforded Ms. Giffords? You've got somebody out there mouthing these things and may not understand what they're saying, or is paid enough or influenced enough to get out and say that, and then all the cowards hide behind them.
Well, let me be the contrarian to what Steve said about the Free State Project. They're at, I think, 90% or 95% of getting the 20,000 signatures to trigger the move to New Hampshire. We already see the impact that a lot of the Free Staters have had in the legislature with just a couple of small handfuls of conservative and libertarians that have decided to let's pursue this in the legislature. And it goes back to the 3% back in the Revolutionary War who actually were the ones who
that's
had
small
that
picture.
happen.
Big picture, we're going to end up with an income tax. Big picture, we're going to end up with government health care. Big picture, we haven't been able to elect a Republican governor ever since they came here.
Well, and that may happen, but I'm looking at if you get 20,000 liberty-loving people here, and even if only 3% of them get elected, or get involved in politics, and I think the percentage of this particular cohort is going to be much higher, I think you will start to see some change. You're right that I think that what they're doing, they're using this heroin epidemic to expand Medicaid expansion.
Mm-hmm.
The 100% from the federal government starts stopping next year. Now
it's already stopped. We didn't enter at 100%. Nobody seems to pay any attention to that.
I missed that
New Hampshire
number.
Came in late.
So what percentage of the Medicaid expansion is being picked up by the feds then?
Somewhere 95%, but the numbers are difficult to turn up. But New Hampshire was late to the party, so there was never the ability to collect that so-called 100%.
That doesn't surprise me. No, I love what the Free State Project is doing. I don't want any Free Staters to send me hate mail. I absolutely support what you're doing, and I want more of you to come here. But my point is that they picked New Hampshire out of a group of states because it's small, because they felt they could have influence, which is very similar to what the Democrats are doing and whatever else is doing. The problem we have being in New Hampshire is that we have ugly, nasty neighbors. We have Vermont to our left, literally, and to our south we have Massachusetts, which means when you say, hey, call the troops up, it's time to storm the beaches, all these Democrats just walk across the border. Now, the liberty-loving people are spread all over the place, you know, and they're not next door. So it's a different experiment. It's harder to do. I think it's amazing what they've done so far, and I don't want it to stop, and I would love all those people. I've been telling them, look, just come here, live here for a day on Election Day, register to vote, just like the Democrats do because it's legal, and vote for some freaking Republicans and Libertarians.
How about
at every level?
How about a free state tent city? That'll do it for Election Day.
You know, they could probably just send in absentee ballots from Martha Fuller Clark's house.
There you go.
You don't even have to live there.
We leave the light on for you.
Right. We don't even have to live there. So,
but looking at the bigger picture, you know, they love liberty. They've come here. They've started to make a difference. As you say, they're in the legislature. That's great. We need to start working with them, those of us that are of a similar mind, to take over the state party from the ground up rather from the top down, which was a mistake we made by trying to install Jack or Andrew, for that matter, who came very close. Is that we didn't have the support infrastructure in place. But more than that, Steve said not electing a Republican governor. The problem is the candidates that we've got from the party at large have been so unpalatable that some of us and most of the Free State people would rather not vote for them. And so then, you know, that's why we don't have a Republican governor. We've not had a good candidate. We need, you know, the nearest thing well, actually, that's not strictly true. Hogan was an excellent candidate. I'm still not sure why he didn't do better. But, you know, John Stephen is a really nice guy, but he wasn't an exciting enough candidate.
Well, the thing is you have to have that Republican governor in conjunction with a House run by somebody like Bill O'Brien, which we're never going to have now, again. And with that kind of leverage to put pressure on the Senate, because the Senate is a lot like a lot of the Republicans in the House that get elected every year. If there's a more conservative center of focus and leadership, they tend to lean a little bit more towards that, and when it's to the other side, they lean that way. So you lose them or you get them, and they need that pressure. They need that weight, and it's not there. But if you had a halfway decent governor and a pretty decent House, you could exercise pressure on everybody else to try to improve things, to get rid of freaking RGGI, which should have been gone, to pass right to work, which we should have had, to pass a bill like SB 116. These things all could get done with a Republican governor because as a Republican, there's a lot more pressure for them to do the right thing.
Was it Christie or was it Pataki that got out of RGGI? It was Christie, wasn't it?
Christie.
Yeah. If Christie can get out of RGGI and New Hampshire can't, we have a problem.
We do.
Well, you have to look at who's skimming the money out of RGGI, though.
True.
All right, them votes don't buy themselves.
That's right.
Right?
They don't.
I was a
spoken like a Southern Democrat, Susan.
Well, I was.
You know how they
work. My
work.
lobbying thing when Reggie was going on, and if anyone had sat in on that process and watched the way they divided up the money. I don't know why anybody's surprised that it's still in place.
No, it's not surprising, but
it has nothing to do with the environment. All of these things they give it this wonderful phrase they call it alternative compliance,
I know.
which is basically the mob invented. It's protection.
Yep.
So why would you don't have to buy renewable energy. You don't have to meet any standards as long as you pay us. Okay? That's all it is. It is extortion money, and it's a nice little fund that pays off the friends of the progressives.
Well, you're thinking of power and payoffs, Susan, and your industry will have studied this. The California power deregulation of the prior decade that fell apart so spectacularly when it turned out and blew up Enron and various other companies was, in fact, the result of collusion between legislatures and power companies. The original attempt to deregulate by Gray Davis was halfway respectable, but by the time Sacramento had finished with it, it was a labyrinth of crony payoffs.
Susan, hold your answer because we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and see what you have to say about that. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Steve McDonald here. Ever notice how some Democrats get all worked up about photo ID? No, not the ID you use to access all those government services like unemployment, Social Security, welfare, and even Obamacare. I'm talking about photo ID to vote. And I don't think it's the photo part. Democrats love photos. President Obama's got a real nice one of himself with that pretty Danish prime minister he took while his wife Michelle was sitting right next to him scowling. So if it's not the photo, it must be the ID. But the only reason to object to the ID would be if you were either not who you said you were, or you didn't live where you said you lived. Which might explain why some Democrats get so upset when you ask for one. I say some Democrats because almost 60% of registered Democrats and 75% of all registered voters thought voter ID was a good idea. So if it's not New Hampshire residents or even Democrats who oppose voter ID, must be the kind that can't get elected unless they can get people to vote in your town who have no business voting there. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Rock Talk.
We have Susan Olson on the line with us, and we're talking about energy. And if you were listening before, or the lack thereof, if you were listening before the break, you heard a question that Mike asked about Gray Davis and regulation in California, and now we're going to get the answer.
Well, you guys know that I am not a fan of deregulated power for the simple reason that the investments that are required to plan 10, 15, 20, 30 years into the future typically don't make economic sense to try and recover over 7 years of senior debt. When the utilities struck their original bargains with municipalities or states, the quid pro quo was that in exchange for me as a regulated utility, I would provide power or phones or maybe even water to the last person at the end of the last road at the furthermost destination in the state, and I would not charge rates for that any higher than that I charged in the capital city. Now, in exchange for that, and being what's called the provider of last resort, in exchange for that, public utility commissions granted these folks a guaranteed return on investment. Now, that sounds pretty scary, but having been part of that business for a very long time, proving what I think it should be my return on investment to a utilities commission was pretty hard. However, when you need a 30-year horizon to build a base station or a base load power plant, and you need to have the assurance that you'll be able to recover your investment over that 30 years, it was, I hate the phrase, a true public-private partnership. What happened, however, is the economy back in the, I guess 80s, was starting to grow, and there seemed to be a long-term, I say long-term, shortage of capacity. So these folks, well, we're going to deregulate a little bit, and we're going to allow the creation of what's called non-utility generators. And these non-utility generators were granted something called avoided cost. They would go in and build a small power station or a gas-fired generator, and they would be granted the same price or cost per kilowatt hour that it would cost, say, Long Island Electric to build a comparable size station. Good news was they didn't have all of the baggage of regulatory compliance. Seemed like not a bad deal. And what, believe it or not, the feds expected the outcome to be was about 5,000 megawatts of additional capacity on a nationwide basis. it turned into 50,000 megawatts of power and kept growing. And this non-utility generator and this guaranteed price per kilowatt hour ended up in these guys being able to run 100% of the time and get 100% of the price, forcing regular generators to back down their own capacity to allow these guys to fill in the blanks. And many, many utilities actually went into bankruptcy because of this. New York was the poster child for that. Long Island Electric was the first to go.
You want to know why the American...
It's all right, wrong button.
Niagara Mohawk. I mean, lots and lots of utilities went out of business. But, gosh, that just didn't end because people saw how easy it was to make money off of short-term energy investments. So a lot of folks went overseas, Enron being one of them. But in New Hampshire, the deregulation has resulted in making New Hampshire one of the most expensive places in the country for electrical power, and has increasingly diminished our own ability to generate electricity here in the state. There was only one utility left that was a generator. Let's exclude Seabrook, but Public Service was the only plant that had generating capacity here. And now those plants are going to be shut down, and it's all going to be commodity-based in the name of free markets. Well, that doesn't always work. So I'm a heretic in that.
I was going to say, hang on a minute. We have a capitalist saying free markets don't work, but I know you got a good explanation for it.
Well, there are just some things that don't lend themselves to commodity pricing, and one of them is long-term investment. It's difficult to plan long-term if your window for recovery of your investment doesn't match your plan. If I'm going to build $1 million house and I get a 30-year loan to do that, my payments are going to be a little less than they would be if I had a 5-year loan or a 15-year loan. And if somebody else is picking up the tab for my mortgage, like ratepayers do, are they going to want a 30-year mortgage payment level, or are they going to want a 5-year mortgage level payment? Utilities are not allowed to recover monies in excess of their long-term investment and their operating costs. Any excess revenue for a regulated utility goes directly to the rate base, goes back to the ratepayers. That was the deal. There was no other deal. But now that deal no longer exists. I feel quite sorry for public service. If I was the CEO, I'd take the keys and I'd walk up to Maggie and I'd walk up to Nada Kane and I'd walk up to the Dems and I'd say, here you go, you run it, you're so smart.
Oh, great. That's all we need.
Hey,
yeah.
You know what? The problem is you think you just can keep taking it and that you're more concerned with keeping the lights on than trying to do the right thing. There comes a breaking point, and I think Atlas Shrugged kind of said it all.
All right, Susan, we got to go. Hard break. Thanks for calling in and spending some time with us.
That was really
well. It was a wandering thing, but you boys have fun, and see you next year.
All righty. Have a good holiday.
Bye.
Bye. All right, Susan Olson obviously knows a hell of a lot more than you or I about power. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're going to open the phone lines and have some fun, see what happens. Stay tuned.
You want to know why the American people are frustrated. You want to know why they're ticked off. You want to know why they cannot understand. It's not that we keep losing elections. That would be frustrating. But you could understand. We got to do a better job. We got to motivate people. We got to convince people. We got to get a message that resonates. We keep winning. And the people we elect don't do what they said they would do.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk. Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Hey, you guys, if you like what you hear or want to go read more, go visit us at GraniteGrok.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see an opportunity for you to enter your email. You can get the Daily Grok, which every morning will provide you with every post from the previous day with a link and a blurb, and then you can pick and choose what you want. Do that at GraniteGrok.com. Get the Daily Grok. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter, and if you love what you hear, you can listen to this and past programs on Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and we are on Ustream and YouTube. So, phone lines are going to be open for the rest of the program. We don't have any other guests scheduled, and we really don't have any plan. We're just going to kind of start to talk through some issues and some things over the week and the past months. And you can call us at 603-715-9689, 603-715-9689. And let's get started, gentlemen. What do we touched on a couple things before we started the show. If you missed the pre-show, you should check it out.
Yeah,
if it gets posted.
Yeah,
because
well, first of all, Susan's power dissertation there was most illuminating.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, and, I disagree with some things, but it is hard if you have grown your assets under one regime of regulation and now the same politicians that put that regime into place come up with an alternative. Of course, the old established way of doing things, that model is going to break. So, yeah, I think that's going on.
Businesses are always trying to operate within the regulatory environment. So when the regulatory environment changes, you have to adapt somehow, or you end up getting crushed by it. And
well,
I can see that the energy sector, especially since it's so politicized now.
Oh, it is, and that is the problem. I'm embroiled in more than a little bit of a imbroglio over at Tree Huggers once again about.
They haven't booted you?
Not yet. I'm the countdown starts probably.
Keep
yesterday.
changing your login. Skip Murphy 8,233.
Now they actually let me start commenting there again, so I'm involved in. They were saying, how can they take away the wind credit? And it's like, I just keep bringing up what I said before. I had an active solar house back in the 80s, and as soon as the tax credits went away, that whole industry died. And it's only because a few people with money have been able to persuade politicians that the wind and solar credits got renewed under this new budget deal, which is another problem.
That's one of many facets of this entire green energy thing that people are completely unaware of. Somebody posted something on Facebook, a friend of mine, really smart guy, but I don't expect him to be in touch with every single aspect of this crap like I am, talking about how Arnold had said something about clean energy and how important it was to at least try to develop clean energy, and that this was a smart, clean thing. And I'm thinking about, but do you know how dirty solar panel production is? Do you know how dirty disposal is? Do you know how dirty battery production is? Do you know how dirty battery disposal is? I mean, these are not green technologies.
No.
I mean, if
lead,
we spent
cadmium, other heavy metals.
If we spent a fraction of the money that we are wasting on solar and battery power, coal would be cleaner, gas would be cleaner, and the power companies would pay for it, not the taxpayers, which means all that money would still be available to people to use in the economy, all of which is being wasted because of politicians who are connected to other people with lots of money, like Tom Steyer, who's a billionaire, who is investing in politicians and not energy.
Well, and that's the thing I've written about for years, having been on my budget committee, that you get all these NGOs, non-government organizations, which basically depend on government tax monies. The whole idea is not to get community involvement or community support. All they're doing is going to a small handful of politicians and saying, please grant us access to the taxpayer money. You look at Elon Musk of Tesla, of the electric cars, Solar City, the to put the PV photovoltaics on the roof. He is extremely worried because if the federal tax credits had gone away for for the PV stuff, he'd be bankrupt right now. Same thing with Tesla. Without those credits, he'd be bankrupt. And I'm having this brouhaha with a couple of people say, well, this is what we want. So, yes, the government should do a carve-out. I said, imagine what's going to happen when all stuff is at the whim of politicians. Is this really what you want, to have a small handful of people deciding what industries are viable or not, and how you get to live your life? Are you insane?
Yeah, what if they decide that your employer is no longer a viable member of their political community and needs to be crushed with regulation?
Yeah, I keep getting told that I can't do math. I'm sorry. I only got an A in multivariate calculus.
They don't have any idea that you...
Which probably puts you a couple of levels above me. I simply wasn't that at it.
He puts the M in STEM, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So I mean, let's just look, as you say, across a couple of those technologies. It's not a cheap, easy, clean process to produce silicon wafers. It is one thing to produce the microchips, which keep getting smaller and faster, and the methods for producing them keep getting more efficient. It's another thing entirely to produce solar panels by the acre, which still require a lot of the same techniques. The wafer production, the various caustic and toxic liquids that are used to etch them, engrave them, and manufacture them, which have to be disposed of. And then, as you say, the batteries, take your pick, cadmium, lithium, whatever.
Phosphate.
Lithium, none of which we have here, and which we have to buy from hostile countries.
Well, we actually have it,
just not in abundance.
They won't allow us to mine it.
Suddenly I sound really loud.
There are a bunch of deposits out in the western part of the country.
But we can't go get it, just like the oil and everything else, right?
Well, that's right. We're limited. So who do we have to get it from? The most polluting country in the world, China.
Well, so this is where you get to be a banana republic, because the reason why we can't get this stuff is we have people that are bananas, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Or anything.
And, of course, as Mike will tell you, there are other reasons why not to build these technologies. They're not very efficient. You need gas-powered plants to back them up. And in the case of solar panels, if you do not keep them clean, they become less and less efficient, which means you need lots of water to clean them.
Correct. That's not a problem here in the Northeast.
Or a good rainy day, which, of course, means they're not producing much electricity.
A lot of good rainy days, but even then... I mean, if you're going to clean them so that they're at optimum efficiency to be inefficient compared to other forms of energy like coal and gas, there's a lot of money involved in the processing of and moving of water for that purpose, especially in places where you put solar panels where they have these things called droughts.
Right.
So, again, yeah, all right, great. If you want to have a solar panel on your house because it makes you feel better, you pay for it. You clean it. And if the town decides to regulate you because you're wasting water on your solar panels, just like states like Maryland charge you for having rain run off your roof, then fine, you pay it. But the entire system as it's set up now has nothing to do, as we've all pointed out, with energy or clean energy.
Yeah. No. The economist's favorite term is trade-off, and that's something that doesn't come up when we talk about energy and renewable energy. There is always a trade-off for everything. Those of us who work in engineering or scientific endeavors understand that implicitly. You can have something that works wonderfully, but if it's going to cost the average individual $250,000, most people aren't going to make that trade-off to have that wonderful bauble or shiny object at the cost of, a house.
And as government gets more intrusive and more expensive, and the people get poorer, they are not going to invest in something that's shiny and makes them feel good. They'll go and chop down a tree and burn it to keep warm.
But that's renewable energy.
Well, it is, until you deforest the entire Northeast again.
Again, yes.
Like was done in the 17th century.
It's been 120 years since we grew the trees back.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
But again, we see the government doing the pincer movement because you see the EPA regulating the crap out of wood-burning stoves. And out in California, there are a lot of places where wood-burning stoves, which would be the good alternative to higher cost stuff because of government regulations, they go after that. They hurt poor people, and then they complain. Well, look at the poverty. Well, it's it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of cases. Same thing in healthcare. Well, we have to force the hospitals to provide free care for the indigent, and then they complain about how these hospitals can't make it. Well, then the other end of the top side of the pincer movement comes down, and we get Obamacare.
And with the wood stove example, you've got some guy who's burning wood to heat his house because he's got oil burner in his house, and oil can be very expensive. Some years it's been $4 or $5 a gallon. It can be really pricey. And some, elitist Cambridge-esque snooty person's outside, and there's wood smoke, and they're like, we need a law against that. That's how it just goes. And then they go and talk to some person who has influence that they know, and then they try to pass this stupid legislation, which happens in New Hampshire. They've tried to pass this, wood stove regulatory state. And, I go outside on a cool morning with the dogs, and nothing makes me happier
than the smell
of wood smoke on a cold autumn day or a cold winter morning.
Or maybe gun smoke at the range.
Oh, gun smoke's good too, but I like the wood smoke one better. And then
I do.
Then you walk back inside and you smell coffee brewing or something. Whatever those smells are. Those are very comforting smells. These dimwits. We have to burn wood. Wood's renewable. Except you can't burn wood because you know how to do it right.
Now, when I first came to this country, I actually put a wood stove in a living room. Unfortunately, the house wasn't really structured right for it. The ceilings were too low. There wasn't enough airflow, so it really roasted one room. But I bought one with a catalytic converter in it.
Mm-hmm. You had to.
Mm-hmm. No, it was an available option at the time.
Oh, okay.
Man, did that thing generate some heat. It glowed nearly white hot if you had it going right.
Yeah. Well, when I bought my house back in the 80s, it had a Vermont Castings Vigilant, which is a large cast iron stove. And that's, I live in a passive solar house, so during the day, if it's bright and sunny, if I boost the temp out first thing in the morning with the propane heater, I don't have to do anything. I just open up my insulated shutters. But that thing can warm up the entire home. And I'll go through 3/4 of wood in a regular winter. Who knows this winter where temperatures have been so high so far. There is a plus to global warming, folks, although this isn't it. This is just El Nino effects.
It's the end of the El Nino. It's going to get a little bit cooler January, February. We should have some snow. Normal to slightly below normal snowfall this year.
That'll be
estimated.
nice.
So January, February, March, early March. Hopefully it's a very, very after last year we need a break.
Yeah, we had three bad winters in a row.
Yeah, and it's time for something easier. I'm sorry, continue, please.
So anyways, I've done this for years, but Steve, you brought up the idea. One of the progressive nitwits basically said, "Well, we have to stop using wood stoves because it's the particulates it's polluting everything." And basically, she put down legislation, I can't remember her name, that you could not sell a wood stove. It always had to buy a new one. It had to be super efficient.
Yes,
and if you sold your house, you couldn't take that stove with you to your new house. I mean, it's just, how many jots and tittles do these people want to control of our lives?
Yeah, it's like you used to be able to buy a push mower for $30, and now you got to pay $80 because it's a regulatory state thing. And if they get their hands on your mower or your weed whacker or your leaf blower, it's going to get even more expensive. And people just pay it. They're like, "Oh, it's inflation." Well, no, it's not. It's regulatory.
And then at the local level, they, in Germany, I used to make fun of this all the time, but it's happening here in the U.S. that if you don't keep your yard just the way that the town says to, you're going to get screwed over that way. It's how much longer are we going to put up with this crap?
I got a bill when my parents passed away before I got down there to clean the house out and sell it. The town fined me for not mowing the lawn. Now, I live in New Hampshire. This is in Fort Myers, okay?
Jeez.
And I don't know. I didn't even think about it. I'm like, they don't even really have grass, It's all sandy. They're a block from the beach on Fort Myers Beach. It's an island, It's a beach with a little dirt in it and some trees and grass. And I'm like, what is this? So I had to call down to a real estate agent and say, I need somebody to mow my lawn until I sell the house. Pain in the butt. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to listen to some words Dana Loesch has for the Godless Left, and then we will... Well, maybe we'll talk about that or something else. Stay tuned. This is Grok Talk.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrok.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Rock Talk.
All right. Gotta turn this down so I can play the Dana Loesch thing. Blaze TV, if you don't ever check it out. I don't watch a lot of anything. A couple of shows that I watch on regular network TV or whatever. I'm kind of shying away from that. But anyway, political TV I don't spend a lot of time watching. But this was pretty good. So let me push the right buttons and click the right things, and we will have a listen to Dana, and then we'll listen and then we'll react.
You know what? If you have a problem with being called the godless left, maybe don't be the godless left. You do realize that in the wake of this terrorist attack, when people were saying our thoughts and our prayers are with those who are affected in the San Bernardino terror attack, you had the New York Daily News and you had elected officials and you had journalists mocking people who were simply asking for prayers, mocking them. Saying, well, we're so glad that the GOP can save everybody from ISIS with their prayers. Here's an idea. How about you guys stop letting terrorists in? How about you guys stop supporting policies that reduce the criteria for unvetted foreigners to get visas to come into this country? Because you all have blood on your hands right now. It wasn't the NRA that made the rule that said we're not allowed to look at the social media activity of people who are unvetted and coming from hotbed areas of terrorism like Tashfeen Malik. I don't know if people missed Government 101 and how all of this works, but that was actually Jay Johnson at the Department of Homeland Security. And by the way, he upheld that rule in 2014. It wasn't Wayne LaPierre. See, Wayne LaPierre is an older white guy. Jay Johnson is a younger black man, and he works with DHS. Wayne LaPierre is at the NRA. Maybe you guys are illiterate and you don't know what all the letters stand for, but the NRA is made up of millions of people who are just like me, and we want to fellowship and protect our Second Amendment rights. We don't make policy decisions, and we sure as hell don't work at DHS.
Okay, it's like 4.5 minutes long, but it was the Christian component we were going to speak of, and you had something to piggyback.
Yeah, we talked about this in the pre-show where, did it disappear? Hold on, I got it. Yeah, this was, I just couldn't believe this. On Friday, the nation's largest gay rights organization, the Human Rights Campaign, HRC, released a chilling report that investigates a disturbing trend of religious colleges taking legal measures to exercise their religious liberty using waivers available to them under Title IX. Basically, it's castigating religious colleges who have the opening already written into law to say, we're religious. Gee, who'd have thunk it? Religious colleges being religious. And many religious colleges adhere to the Judeo-Christian faith. Homosexuality is not a good thing in Christianity. Well, HRC gets rather militant, and so once again we see the attack from the other side of the left going after people who just want to live their faith. And, you know, as Dana was saying that, this happened all, right after, almost the day after, and for the next 3 days after San Bernardino, where you saw all these people going after those people of faith, those people who just wanted to solemnize, hey, a tragedy just happened, a moment of silence. When Ben Carson called for that at the debate, a lot of the media went after him for that in very snarky tweets. And basically trying to say that was more of a political stunt than maybe what it really was, knowing who Ben Carson is and what his faith is just, hey, a moment of silence, please. A little bit of respect. But we see that the left has no respect for those who have faith. Just because, well, we all know, based on lots of polls that have been taken, that the left is more godless. Dana Loesch is right. The left pretty much is atheistic, or certainly doesn't have or hold to a religious theology that mirrors that of the evangelicals or other regular Orthodox Christianity. I didn't want to say mainline Christianity because many of those denominations have gone off the rails themselves. And I've written about that for a long time as well. But I was watching the Kelly Report, and Frank Luntz was doing one of his focus groups. And one of the big questions was, do you feel, are you scared for this country? And a big part of that audience said, this country is changing and not for the better. I don't recognize this country anymore. We are going off the rails. And it is the constant din from the left that is basically saying anything that made this country great is now anathema. And we're made to feel that way. And I think it is the push to be able to say, just like when the Tea Party started, Glenn Beck famously said, "You are not alone." And the Tea Party exploded, a good way of exploding. And I think we're seeing that attack vein again from the left, trying to make us isolated, make us feel alone. And I'm glad that Dana said what she did. I think a lot of people have, but I'm glad to see that she put the right amount of self-righteousness into it. Look, what does that say about the left when you can't even leave people of faith alone? And we all know the media are mere Democrats with bylines, and we know that almost all Democrats nowadays are progressives, and we all know that pretty much progressive is just code word for I'm a big socialist.
It's just another thing that they're against. They everything they oppose, they attack relentlessly, and it doesn't stop until they win. And people want to just live their lives.
It doesn't stop when they win.
It doesn't. But it becomes institutionalized, and then everything else is forced underground, which is entirely the point. Constitutional rights, religious beliefs, free speech. These are all things that they'll provide, that they'll give lip service to win an office if they feel they need to kiss their constituents' backsides. But they don't want it because it interferes with what they want, which is complete control by government. They get to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and say whatever they want, and control everybody's lives. And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Let me finish the rest of the piece because it's pretty short. In the eyes of the HRC, the constitutional rights, again, the constitutional rights of a religious school to remain faithful to its doctrinal views on sexuality and sexual complementariness should be subjugated to the expressive and sexual identity of prospective students. In their view, moral condemnation of homosexuality or transgender identity is tantamount to discrimination, and therefore Christian schools should not be treated so tolerantly under federal law. With the wind at its back, however, the HRC is capitalizing on legal and cultural shifts in believing it can single out and intimidate, again, the left intimidates you to be silent, those Christian schools which, surprise, believe and act according to Christian traditions. Most of these colleges...
Where is this, by the way?
This is at National Review Online.
I got to send this to some people.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, I have friends who have gay relatives, and they had, this and that and the other thing, and they're all like, they just want to be, allowed to do the same things and to be left alone. And I'm like, no, they don't.
No.
They want you to do what they want. They're never going to leave you alone.
They don't want you to merely let them do what they want. They want you to actively approve of their lifestyle. There are lots of quiet gay people in the world.
Oh, hell yeah.
That just get on with their lives, that you either don't notice that they're gay or that they're so inoffensive about how they lead their lives. And I don't mean
their private lives.
I don't mean they're shrinking violets. They may show up with their boyfriend or girlfriend as appropriate, and you get used to seeing them. But they don't rub your face in it. And that's the whole difference. The militants want to rub your face in it, want you to approve of them while they're rubbing your face in it. And that is why they get resistance and then they get angry. Somebody who just wants to be left alone, like the rest of us want to be left alone by them, isn't militant enough for them.
You know why the left loves Islam right now and why they refuse to attack Islam? We hear all the time that Islam is the religion of peace. Well, I'm sorry, but actual reality says it's not. especially with the militant Islamists. But Islam really means submission. Now, think about that for just a moment. Submission. Submission means you will do what we say when we tell you to do it. Here, the HRC is doing the same thing. It's nothing more than secular Islam. You will submit to our demands, and no, you should not speak up and defend yourselves, and no, you should not depend on your secular rights. We are a secular religion that is telling you, here is your morality, shut up and submit.
Right. So the HRC, as opposed to that other HRC that hopefully will lose the election, the HRC is a perfect bedfellow for CARE, for example, the Islamic Front organization.
Yeah.
Except for one thing. They'll be the first up against the wall when the revolution comes. Because if the Sharia law folks, if the jihadis ever get control, then all those gay rights people will be thrown off the top of buildings.
Yeah, as we are seeing in Iran and other areas where ISIS is in control. And this is what drives me crazy. You hear the feminists complaining about misogynic men supposedly here in the United States and in the Western world. And yet you go over to the Middle East where misogyny is more the norm than not. And they say nothing.
No.
They say nothing. The gays here in America, where this is the biggest area where gay rights is being pushed. If you're really going to go against what's really bad, why aren't you over in the Middle East trying to save your gay brethren
and your female brethren and your children and and there are black people over there being oppressed? I mean, that's the
worse
problem.
Than they are than here.
Yeah, because Arabs are Arabs and black people are slaves.
The emperors never had clothes on this argument. They don't care about women or children or gays or any organization or group or section or whatever unless they do exactly what they want them to do. So it's not about any of that. It's not about being female or transgendered or homosexual or a child. It's about doing what the socialists want you to do under no uncertain terms. You will follow our dictates. Otherwise, you have no rights.
Yeah. And again, we see yet another area of life where they're not trying to win the hearts and minds of individual people and getting real community support. They're going to go after the politicians to demand their views and their demands put into statutes to control the lives of others.
Right, just as will happen if we're not careful with hate speech in Islam in the near future. It's happened in Canada. Mark Stein has written about it. He's basically a fugitive. Mark Stein in Maclean's magazine, over an article that he wrote that was mildly critical of Islam, in fact pointed out essential truths, caused the Hitman, the magazine, to be sued, and it was a long, ongoing, and drawn-out process by the Human Rights Councils, I think, in various states around, or provinces around Canada.
And he's still embroiled in yet another free speech imbroglio here in the United States because he went after Hockey Stick Man and the gay religion.
Yeah.
So, the left does not believe in free expression.
Well, the God of the left says, "L'état c'est moi." I am the state. Strangely enough, Muhammad says, "L'état c'est moi."
Yeah,
I am the state and the law.
There's nothing strange about that. Okay, we're gonna we got about 20 seconds before we take our break. We will be back in the next segment. Probably talk about some debates. There's a little heard of Democrat debate tonight that we can talk about, but obscure.
And there's a GOP trying to blow itself up.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
so
I've
much,
made a
but,
decision I should reveal on live stream here.
All right, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Raw Talk.
Feel the power.
Oh, I could feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Raw Talk.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
From Michelle Lavelle at School Choice for New Hampshire. On December 14, 2015, the presiding judge of the Stratford Superior Court, Justice Brian T. Tucker, denied the injunction brought by the New Hampshire Department of Education and the State Attorney General's office against the Croydon School Board. The NHDOE and AG claimed that 4 Croydon students would be irreparably harmed if allowed to remain at the Newport Montessori School as part of the town's school choice program. In the court's ruling, the judge said that the NHDOE previously allowed students to remain in their private schools and had advanced knowledge that the board intended to continue their program in the 2015-2016 school year, but did not take immediate action at those times. The judges denied the injunction. You can read more at schoolchoicenh.org. Gun control lobbyist Mark Kelly from Americans for Responsible Solutions and his wife, Grabby Gun Grabber Giffords, were in New Hampshire this past week to announce their new coalition, Granite State Solutions for Common Sense. The first rule of the new group, like most liberal groups, is lie. GraniteRock.com's Kimberly Moran, reporting for Examiner.com, noted that according to a tweet from NH1's Kevin Landrigan, Kelly claimed there is 1 death every 3 days from gun violence in the Granite State. Moran points readers to the FBI's own crime statistics on homicides to refute the claim and adds how ironic it is that the organization is called Granite State when it is formed by someone from Arizona, and that they use the words common sense when they have offered 0 solutions that would actually stop gun violence. In a story titled, After 200 Years, the Crown Would Feel at Home Here Again, former State Supreme Court Justice Chuck Douglas asks, where do you go to challenge illegal government decisions when the court closes you out? China and Russia, he notes, have an approach to government responsibility that places the powers of government above and over the people. Our system is the reverse. Our 1784 Bill of Rights in Part 1, Article 8 clearly says the following: all power residing originally in and being derived from the people, all the magistrates and officers of government are their substitutes and agents and at all times accountable to them. Unfortunately, that right of accountability has been denied time and time again in recent years by court decisions making government less and less accountable to our individual citizens by closing the courthouses to taxpayers. Douglas cites a number of New Hampshire court cases to make his point. You can find the business end of that stick at GraniteRock.com. We have some post-Republican debate polling to report. The Boston Herald's New Hampshire primary poll has Trump at 26, Cruz at 12, Rubio 12, Christie 11, Bush 10, Kasich 8, Fiorina 6, Carson 5, Paul 3, and then the rest. Fiorina and Carson continue to slide while Donald Trump maintains a stranglehold on first place. The next position is a statistical tie in New Hampshire. But as of this writing, only Cruz, Trump, and Rubio stand a chance to find some separation as a result of a bump coming out of the Iowa caucus. Christie is still showing well among the RINOs, but Bush and Kasich continue to dog his heels as supporters hope the other RINOs will ignore their donors and drop their bid to join a unification movement behind just one viable invertebrate Republican. Nationally, post-debate, Trump is at 35 with Cruz in second at 18. Rubio is at 13, followed by Carson, Bush, and Christie at 6. Fiorina polls at 5, and Kasich and Paul are tied at 2.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Raw Talk.
Warning, this is not a safe space. I repeat, this is not a safe space.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Welcome to Hour 2, Grok Talk. Remember to get that daily grok I told you about. Go sign up for that. You'll even get links to audio from this program. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Just look for Granite Grok. And Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeart. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
And you'll find the sign up right next to that handy donate button, too.
Yes, right next to the handy donate button.
Always appreciated.
So we have later tonight, like an infomercial, you know, after a Mystery Science Theater 3000, there's a Democrat debate with 3 people.
2.5.
2.5.
2.5 men?
Yes, two.
Well, yeah, that pretty much
is 2.5 men, because
Hillary's still got more balls than Barack Obama.
That other HRC will be in a pantsuit, no
You're
doubt.
close to breaking rule number 1.
I know. Golf balls. I'm talking about golf balls. Had a little controversy there with the Sanders campaign and the Hillary campaign.
The redistribution of data wealth?
The redistribution of data wealth. Apparently the DNC does not support the redistribution of data wealth. And the Sanders campaign has been made to suffer, even though he's all about the redistribution of all kinds of wealth, data or otherwise.
Yeah. So
well, you know, his answer has to be he's going to tax their database so he can claim it.
That's right.
Well, actually, the brouhaha was over by this morning, where the DNC reinstated his data access. But I think this story is just endemic of fine for me, but not for thee kind of deal.
Oh, I remember what I said this morning in the pre-show. We were talking about this, and I said, well, you know, what Sanders should have said is, well, you know, I'm not really sure I'm going to fire anybody because I think that if we had any emails, somebody probably deleted them. You know, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, they did delete the guy.
Yeah, they deleted the guy, yeah.
Deleted the guy.
He was like the Billy Shaheen. He went out and took the shot for the team and then had to step back, you know.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's so crazy
Suicide bomber, so to speak.
You know, all Sanders did was appropriate somebody else's
resources,
private property.
Correct. Which is exactly what the Democrat Party does.
Yeah, that's exactly what government does, especially when it's run by Democrats.
Well, and Hillary's all for this too, because she's going after the drug companies. Mm-hmm. She's going to go after the gun companies. I mean, she basically wants their stuff. So, but man, isn't it enjoyable to watch when the shoe lands on their foot and it's their stuff that gets taken? I'm still waiting because of the affirmative action program on housing for the first workforce housing to be put up next to their mansion in New York.
Mm-hmm.
One of the richest counties in the country.
Yeah.
You know, you know, going back to trailer trash, I guess.
And there's a I think it's Republican, may even be a Democrat county executive or something that's been fighting this.
Oh,
Ostrentino or whatever his name is.
Right.
Ostrentino.
Yeah, and I can't
remember his name. I have some audio from him someplace.
Westchester County.
Yeah, Westchester County.
Yeah.
We put that up.
Yeah, we've played it, and he makes a very clear case for why it's crazy for the government and HUD to come in and do this. And what better county to do it to, really?
Well, they're doing it now all over the country.
Yes, they are.
Where some of these places have taken money from HUD, and now HUD's coming along like a despot and saying, we don't care about the agreement we actually signed. You have to do more, or we're going to bring you to court and bankrupt you.
And fans of Granite Grok will be familiar with this because our good friend Ken Eyring spent lots of time on this very early on with Granite State Futures and all this other crazy stuff and going town to town to inform people that...
With Jane Cormier.
Right, to inform people that this is what it says in the small print and this is what it means in the real world. And in several cases, they managed to prevent that from being imposed on a number of towns in the state. But, it takes so much time and energy to do this all the time, and the opposition, HUD, etc., they never stop.
Well, they also get paid for doing
that's
this.
That's true, they do.
Right. Yeah,
a lot.
You refer to non-governmental organizations that basically operate off the taxpayer dime and are bad for us. They're doing the bidding of the left. We have a much more descriptive term in the UK. We call them quangos.
Okay, what does that mean?
Quasi-autonomous non-government organizations, which they are. They're quasi-autonomous because they're basically paid by the government to do the government's bidding to be bad for us.
Yeah.
And so we don't bother spelling out the words, spelling out the letters. We just call them quangos.
Yeah. I had this happen. Here in New Hampshire, we have petition warrant articles. And for those who are not from New Hampshire, pretty much every town runs its own budget. And we have historically had town meetings where people stand up and say, well, I want to adjust the budget, I want to do this, I want to do that. It isn't like a mayor with town or city councilors doing the budget and that's it. Everybody here gets to play a role in it. And my role in my hamlet was, we put the budget together. We took the budget proposals, and all they were proposals from the town and from the school system because they were separate. And we would present that to the town for either changes at a public meeting before everybody voted on it. And in an old-fashioned town meeting, everybody would just stay there and they'd yak their way through everything, every single budget line item, and we'd have a ton of votes. But a petition warrant is something that somebody outside of the town or the school board could present for the town to consider to vote it up. Could have a cost to it, like a budget line item, or what we're seeing this time in agritourism, which people who have read Granite Rock, we've watched the tree farm over in Henniker go through this whole hassle that's happening in my town right now, where there's the last remaining commercial farm is trying to do weddings.
Oh,
and
that's right. Yes,
they're running into the same problem. But I'm getting off tangent here. So, anyways, we had one of these charity organizations. They call them social services organizations because if you're running off of tax money, you're no longer a charity. And they actually said, the one person said, "Well, we are part of government. All we're doing is looking like just one of your other departments looking for money." And I said, "Really? Are you going to open your books to us?" And, of course, horrified reaction from this lady said, No, you can't do that.
If you're part of government.
And I said, if you're part of government, then we should have control over your budget. You need to report to us. You need to give us oversight of your budget. Otherwise, you're not part of government. She got rather upset with me for saying that.
Yeah, let me read you this description, which I found I think is pretty accurate. A quango, quasi-autonomous non-governmental organization in which the U is sort of inserted to make it pronounceable, describes an ostensibly non-government organization performing government functions, often in receipt of funding or other support from government. While mainstream non-government organizations mostly get their donations or funds from the public or other organizations that support their cause. Numerous quangos were created from the 1980s and onwards, and then he talks about various British organizations. But the point is that's exactly what we have. A true non-government organization would be the NRA or Cato or Heritage. What we have, these HUD-sponsored socialist infiltrators are basically quangos.
Yeah. I mean, we see that in every part of government nowadays. We have these tax-sucking organizations. In Belknap County, there's about 250 of them, all begging.
250, wow.
Yeah, all just about begging for all kinds of money, for all kinds of things, saying, please, if you don't give us money, this won't get done, and we'll all go out of business, to which the three commissioners of the Belknap County ought to be going, okay, if you don't want to go out of business, go door to door and get your charitable donations. Oh, but that would be too hard. And I kid you not, that's exactly what I was told. That would be too hard and take too much time.
We would rather have the government plunder your pockets to finance us.
Then you don't deserve to be there, somebody else who can be more appealing and raise money can do it better.
Correct.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we will probably talk about what Mr. Rogers calls the clash of the Cuban Titans. Stay tuned. We'll be right
Hi,
back.
this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Rock Talk.
All right. Mike is trying to kill Skip.
Gosh.
Why don't you wait a second? Okay. Grok Talk, CNHT, Concord. Go ahead.
A little bit of windshield splatter there.
Yes, it was. The keyboard is safe, but he basically sucked it down his lungs. Water, that is.
Okay,
because you said...
well, I have to put the background to this
Okay,
first.
well, that's what we're going to talk about, so go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So there was an article I was reading on American Thinker, I think it was yesterday's Thinker by Ed Straker, who actually writes his own organization, newsmachete.com. Let's give credit where it's due. That Christie is basically a suicide bomber standing next to Marco Rubio. He has no organization anywhere except Iowa and New Hampshire, and precious little even in Iowa. But he's determined to resurrect what's left of his campaign in New Hampshire. If he does so and drives down Rubio's share of the vote sufficiently, he's probably ending Rubio's chances as he does it. And so Ed Straker's point is that Christie is a suicide bomber waiting to explode next to Rubio. The
remark.
So what I said to Skip was, so if Rubio's suicide vest explodes and just if Christie's suicide vest explodes and that mental picture was just too much for Skip as he was sucking down a mouthful of water.
It hurt. It really hurt going down.
So, the GOP is doing itself all sorts of harm. So I'm going to put a question out there, a hypothetical. Could it be that people like Jeff Chittister, Joe McQuaid, and all the people that have strangely and belatedly jumped on the Christie bandwagon in New Hampshire actually know what they're doing and are not really endorsing Christie, but are blowing up the establishment by making sure that Christie takes enough votes away from Rubio, Bush, and a couple of others to make sure that the top of the ticket is really Cruz versus Trump?
I might give Jeff credit for that.
Yeah.
But the rest of the Rhino herd that is following the Christie bandwagon, they're not that dynamic a thinker. They really aren't. I mean, if they were that smart, then Republicans would be running everything, and they're not. They're just not. And
they're not because they keep picking bad candidates and losing
and forcing them on us. Not just picking them, but when their own grassroots says, "No, don't do it," and they do it, and then they attack us.
Yeah,
they're not very bright.
No, we saw that, and I love bringing it up over and over again, and I'm going to do it for years to come.
I know, until your last dying breath.
Yes, Havenstein and Brown in this last November. If you insult the base, if you try to out-Democrat your Democrat rival, the base isn't going to support you. That's just the way it is. And here's let's see, this is over big government. Democrat leaders dance, gloat, declare Speaker Paul Ryan gave away the store. And even though I've not been blogging very much lately because of family responsibilities right now, I have been watching this disaster roll out, knowing what was coming to happen, and it happened. And, why are Republicans repeatedly giving stuff to the Democrats? You've owned the majority in this House for a number of years now, where you wrote this thing. You've now had the majority in the Senate, where you could support this thing. And you did it anyways, knowing how ugly the base is with the insurgency going on with the outsiders in the presidential campaigns. And you gave the store away to the Democrat leadership. Harry Reid's, he might even be able to see out of his right eye after this. There's Chuck Schumer looking like a stork with his hands up doing a touchdown dance, and Obama is saying, I like Paul Ryan. Now, part of me says...
Obama calls Paul Ryan and thanks him for his accomplishments, his working together, and wishes him a Merry Christmas.
And this totally violates rule number one, which is if a Democrat supports it, you should either run away or look more than twice.
Yeah, I mean...
doing so.
This could have a double purpose, and I will tell folks before I say this, this is the last straw for me. But anyways, it could be that, indeed, they're trying to play the devil's advocate to suppress the Republican vote by making Republican voters so mad at them that they're not going to vote for them in the upcoming elections. Or they're actually just plain happy. Occam's razor, take your pick.
I think the Democrats are just plain happy. I don't think even they are that conniving.
Well, at the leadership maybe not Nancy Pelosi, but some of these other people.
Washerwoman Schultz? She's not that smart either.
No, but Schumer.
Oh, Schumer, yes, man's very smart.
Yeah, Harry Reid. You can hate him.
How can people that smart be communists? Is what I want to know.
Well, because it's other people's money, and they've got theirs already. How do you become a multimillionaire serving in government? Ask Harry Reid. But anyways, I digress. It's a case where, once again, we hear the campaign promises and we see the opposite results. They're there to stop the Democrat and the Obama agenda. They just gave them everything that they want. All the big stuff that they want, sanctuary cities, the
refugee money.
Planned
Parenthood money.
All the big hot-button items for the base that the Republican leadership has just shown once again how out of touch they are. Even Rush Limbaugh said it's time to blow up the Republican Party. And I will tell you right now, folks, either Monday or Tuesday, or as soon as I can get down to town hall, I am unenrolling from the Republican Party here in New Hampshire. This is the last straw. I've had it. I can't take it anymore because, to me, my moral values say I cannot be part of an organization that acts contrary to those morals. That if I have standards, that if I have, I'm losing track of
you have principles.
Principles, right? If you're not going to support my principles, even though you campaign on them, they're encoded and inscribed in your platform. But then you vote and act on completely contrary to that. I cannot lend my name, my personal name, my reputation to you doing that in my name. So I'm not going to do it anymore.
So at some point, this is going to devolve into either a third-party bid by Cruz and Trump together. I'm not dismissing that. Or the party's just going to blow up and become completely defunct. So there's so much stuff out there. Please cue soundbite number one, Mr. Editor. The Cruz one about frustration.
About Republicans not voting like Republicans?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
You want to know why the American people are frustrated. You want to know why they're ticked off. You want to know why they cannot understand. It's not that we keep losing elections. That would be frustrating. But you could understand. We got to do a better job. We got to motivate people. We got to convince people. We got to get a message that resonates. We keep winning, and the people we elect don't do what they said they would do.
Bingo.
That's exactly my point. And that, frankly, if you ran that regularly over and over, that would elect President Trump because he has his finger on it. President Cruz. Trump has his finger on the pulse too, but I think Cruz expresses it more eloquently, more elegantly, and if anything, even more forcefully, even though he doesn't yell and scream about it.
It is entertaining to watch not just the press and the establishment and the political class gesticulate and freak out over Trump, but regular people who weren't always paying attention like we do and don't always follow this to the level of detail, who are curious. On one side, many are flocking to this guy who's Trump. He's not a statesman. He's just a guy who happens to be saying all the right things. And asking, and then the other side, which is people who were like, oh my God, this is awful. He's so horrible, blah, 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 blah. But they can't really articulate what their objection is. And it's like, the reason he's popular is because he's saying what everybody's thinking. Everybody's thinking this is all screwed up. even people who don't pay attention know it's screwed up, but they're not sure why. And here comes Donald Trump, and he's just saying exactly what people think.
He's a perfect populist at the right time.
And that's what it is. It's populist.
I still think in some ways he's a dangerous guy because of thin-skinned, etc. But nonetheless, on a superficial level, he is absolutely everything embodied that the people are looking for, because the government class, the ruling class, keeps stomping on the people over and over and over. They promise us one thing, they do another. They campaign as conservatives and run as and operate as Democrats. Paul Ryan's the latest example. If he even produces one bill next year that follows the pattern that he laid out of being a minimal bill, single purpose, I will be absolutely stunned. You can fund the government, you can do a continuing resolution and hold your nose, but 2,000 pages of nitty-gritty, itty-bitty regulations and payouts to keep the various people on board, that isn't funding the government at flat for a few more months. That is crony government through and through and through.
That's good.
My God! This is what drives me absolutely crazy about not only the Republicans in D.C., but also here in Concord. Mm-hmm. They're in charge. They've been in charge for years. They control the committees. For Paul Ryan to say, this happened all before me, bullcrap. Because
they could have written the bill.
Right. They had control of the whole process for 2 years.
And it doesn't matter if they'd already written it, because everybody knows they all have bills in their drawers, in their offices, ready to go when the time is right. And the time's always right if you're in charge of everything. All you have to do is stick it together, which is how they ended up with the crap bill they got.
They stuck it to us again.
Yes.
That's really what it comes down to. And Trump, I wrote about this a lot of times. The reason why the Trump phenomenon has happened is because the GOP leadership sucks. They have failed in what they're supposed to do. They've become insular, elitist, and totally removed from what
they're
their base
part
is.
of the political class now. There's very little separation.
And Rubio's got sucked into this, unfortunately. And
and somebody like Cruz, who objects publicly and in the body itself on the Senate floor, is called divisive because he will not.
Divisive and a wacko bird, but I'll take the wacko bird over the insiders any day. But I was going to say Cruz actually damaged himself slightly because in order to play the arcane game of the Senate, to put a poison pill into that Gang of Eight bill, he effectively has ended up being quoted as for some kind of amnesty.
Yeah.
And frankly, he's in a difficult position. He's beginning to look like a pretzel over it. At some point, he's going to have to figure out how to terminate that discussion, or else it's going to damage him. But I still believe that his intent was correct when he did this, which was to take away the citizenship option and make it unpalatable to Democrats.
Yeah, and you're right on that. But I look at this and go, you fools up at the top echelons of the Republican Party, you have brought us upon yourselves. A phrase I've been using for years. You guys created this. If you had actually just done what you said that you were going to do and do it faithfully, you wouldn't be having this problem. The base and the establishment would not be at enmity with each other because we'd all be on the same page. Because all the base is saying, what you tell us you believe, just do it. It's that simple. I don't want to hear about divided government because you own 2/3 of, you own a full third of this. I don't want to hear this divided government crap because all it says one more time.
When you're done, we're going to take a break. Go ahead.
One more time is that, I'm sorry, we gave you the House. I'm sorry, we gave you the Senate. But if you can only rule and get the Republican agenda through, if you only own all branches of the government, then what use of you?
What good is separation of powers?
That's right.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, Mike, which is why I turned your mic off. So sorry. We have 30 more minutes to go, and you're still with us. Thank you very much. And if you're listening to the podcast, of course, it's at your convenience. You can check us out. Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeart, and something else that I wrote I can't read. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteRock.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter. From the CNHT studios in Concord, New Hampshire, just a few blocks from the New Hampshire State House, this is
Rock Talk.
Three, two, one.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Rock Talk.
All right. The last half hour of the last show of 2015.
Now I wake up.
Now you wake up. You've sounded pretty awake for the last 90 minutes.
You've been doing pretty well, Skip. So, dear listeners, 603-715-9689. Light up our flasher, and we will put you on the air, and you can agree or disagree. We'd love to have you call in. And so the bill that blew up Paul Ryan, 2,000 pages and $1.1 trillion in ostensible cost, possibly as high as $2 trillion by the time it's all said and done. That is a document printed on billion-dollar, with a B, bills, for all intents and purposes. Because to be perfectly frank, the language in it doesn't matter a damn. If they simply wanted to fund government, if they wanted to fund all the agencies flat, if they wanted to suck it up and even fund Planned Parenthood flat in order to avoid being accused of shutting down the government, it could have been a one-page bill saying the funding for government shall continue at current levels for X months, the end.
Yeah.
But they didn't. It's full of crony government giveaways.
You know, I have no problem, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I'm embroiled in a couple conversations on that are involving tax credits and tax subsidies, and with the renewable energy type stuff. My take on tax credits is that if it's your money, you should be able to keep most of it. Lessen the taxes. It's our money to begin with. Us individuals, we who actually earn it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the political class, Republicans included, believe it's their money to manipulate. So anytime they pass a huge bill that allows us to keep more of our money, I'm good for that. The problem is that they continue, as you point out, with the tax laws, is to continually decide what is the best behavior today, which may not be the best behavior tomorrow.
And that right there is the other reason why the economy sucks, because if you keep changing the rules of the game, people won't invest.
Yeah, Susan had the right of it as far as, big investments in power plants and stuff like that. I can understand that. I don't necessarily agree that you have to have regulatory control over the process to do a stable environment. I think more than likely it'd be more stable in a free market environment where we, the individuals, would get a better price for our dollars. If you guess wrong and you put up $1 billion plant and you've made the wrong bet on the wrong energy source, then somebody else is going to come along and eat your lunch. I have no problem with that.
Well, are they? I mean, think about it. First of all, there's all the infrastructure of delivery. Now, who does that belong to?
Well, right now it
belongs to Eversource.
Eversource right now. They own the transmission. That stuff's going to stick around for a while.
I know. There's a cost associated with that.
Right. And you get billed for that.
And you get billed for that. And the thing where people are expecting to have power, it's not, the problem with the investment structure and all that other crap, and it all comes down to, it's not like you can choose to go to Walmart or Target because they're right next to each other to buy whatever it is you buy.
I can change my energy supplier.
Not typically.
Yes,
you can now, but it used to be that there was usually only one.
Right, it was
and
a
it was
monopoly.
Because it was so freaking huge.
And you can't get great deals, and you can't get deals that go on season after season. You may get a good deal for the summer when the demand is lower in most cases, but it suddenly miraculously expires in November, for example.
If you go back in history, when electricity generation and distribution were in its infancy, you had big choices. You had more choices than you did a couple decades ago, where you're right, we had one energy generation and distribution, especially here in New Hampshire, which was basically now Eversource.
God help us if Comcast gets involved in that.
PSNH, right. But it's the same thing with all parts of government. We're finding out, for a number of different reasons, how hard it is, how long it takes, how many phone calls you got to do just to get a simple card with one number on it. I can't go into any more details than that. To be able to get a case of formula. Go ahead. When government is the only place you can turn to, it's a quagmire. It really is. I finally found what I had to do, and I just got in my car, drove for an hour, and I got it. And it's not cheap, but I could get it. Instead of spending 2 weeks waiting for government to do what it's supposed to do. So, I listen to all these people saying, well, government, we decide to do this, and when it really is, we're trying to make government decide what it is for us. And I keep trying to point out, you don't want politicians and unelectable, unaccountable, and unassailable, unreachable bureaucrats trying to do this. Now, there are some people who are trying to be helpful. They just don't know where to turn. It's like when people call me and they're looking for a different part of the company. It's like, we have 4,000 people and hundreds of products. I'm not sure who this is, who you should talk to. And we're $1 billion corporation. If it's hard at $1 billion, how hard can it be at a $4 trillion corporation or organization?
With a $2.5 trillion revenue stream.
Yes. Yeah, and that in itself is a problem. But I just look at this stuff and I go, the people who want big government generally are the ones who don't have to deal with big government.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, they'd be going, what the crap? How the heck do I do this? Mm-hmm. They really don't understand what it is they put everybody else through. They may feel good about themselves. That's the progressive way. I'm going to get government to demand people behave in a certain way, and I'll feel great about it because that's the way they're supposed to be. Yeah, that's why we had big public housing projects like the Stalinist skyscrapers they were, and why we pulled them all down 3 decades later. I just can't wait to see what the next housing zoning laws from D.C. are going to do to this country, as we're already seeing right now. In Laconia, they've got this big urban development parking lot in the center of town where it used to be, was not uncommon to have a quarter to half the storefronts empty, but we had to have a parking lot, and we had to make this, not the old style fashion. Well, Concord, right out front here. We've been saying about it for years. And now, guess what? The parking garage is structurally failing. Now what you going to do? This was the big idea of government to improve things, and it never worked out.
The garage is structurally failing?
Yes.
Which one?
The big one right in the center of the shopping district downtown.
I mean, the one that's behind us here, that's between us and the highway.
No, in Concord. I'm not Concord, in Laconia.
In Laconia.
Laconia.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, you'd have people running away from Concord, which is not altogether a bad
this
thing.
This is the same thing where I keep saying, well, if we've got global warming, we should take down our skating rink. Oh, we can't do that. Why? We signed an agreement with the feds who gave us the grant money to build that. Well, why did we do that? Well, because they gave us the money. Well, what's in the grant? It says, well, if we ever take it down, we have to pay them back with interest.
Well, here's a question. How much more is it going to cost you to maintain and operate a skating rink indefinitely that you're not going to use or whatever you're going to lose money on versus what it would cost you to back out of the deal?
Oh, but that's the quality of life. We have to provide that for our citizens in the dead of winter.
Just in case they want to skate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's with the good old boys in my town, it's always about the quality of life. Until I pointed out that, well, then explain to me, how good of a quality of life do you want for this particular activity that our Parks and Recreation Department was putting on? It cost you $200 a head. I was sitting there, first time anybody was bringing a computer and Excel to a budget committee hearing, and I just quickly ran the numbers right in front of them and went, $200 a head? The good old boys left. and I did win that one. But, This is the thing. It's always about other people who believe their ideas are good, and I have no problem with that, demanding that other people's money, some of them are hard-put people. You've got widows, you've got poor people who can barely make their property tax stuff, and yet these people who can afford this all on their own are demanding that other people provide it for them.
It's interesting. The barn in our town, which belongs to the town and was renovated at some considerable expense, was done by donations from some of the wealthier folks in the town, including some of the selectmen. Now, that's how to do it. I bet there was some town money used as well. Because
not every town is Hollis, though.
No.
Right.
Exactly. But as Skip points
out, the idea is
the point is there are some people in the town that are rich enough that probably wouldn't mind having their names on a plaque somewhere. And why the hell should the poor people in the town have to pay for it?
You're right. I mean, Guilford is not an unrich town.
And the money's not free, and that's the thing.
That's the thing. Now, there's a big contingent because we have lakefront on Lake Winnipesaukee. There are some fabulously wealthy people who spend very little time actually in Guilford, but they pay high property taxes. But we have several trailer parks in Guilford as well. So we have, as the progressives like to say, income inequality. But when it comes to raising the property taxes, everybody's got to pay. And, I feel bad because these quality of lifers always seem to want to raise the cost or the expense to the taxpayers, increase that rate faster than the incomes of the taxpayers themselves. That's the one thing I always said. I've got one agenda item. Expenses, the spending in the town should never go above the average rise in income of the individual folks paying it. I was looked on as a heretic.
Oh, I know. It should actually be less, but
it should be. And actually for several years during the Great Recession.
What they're really saying is that we're going to define your quality of life for you. We're not going to allow you to use your own money to do that.
Now, I have to say that during the Great Recession times, the town part, they put a lid on spending. And a couple of times it actually went down a fraction, which I thought was the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Now, school board, no.
No, they always go up.
The needs are always increasing. That's their watchword. No, it needs the student population may be going down, but the needs are always increasing. And I keep looking like,
the need to keep paychecks in the hands of union dues payers.
Yeah. But anyways, I think I've just taken us off point.
No, that's fine. We can. That's a good point though, because we have one more segment left to do, and we can talk about we can either go back to the clash of the Cuban Titans, which we never got to, or talk about the Republican debate, which I didn't watch, so I can't really tell you anything about it. I've only heard some post-debate responses, and
actually, it was a good debate.
Was it? All right, we'll take a quick break.
I'll throw in a couple of thoughts, and we can get it going.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come right back and talk about that. Hang on a second while I do this, and we'll move it.
For many months, I've been speaking about what I call the Washington cartel. The Washington cartel consists of career politicians in both parties who get in bed with lobbyists and special interests here in Washington and grow and grow and grow government. The Washington cartel is, I believe, the source of the volcanic frustration Americans face across this country. And it is difficult to find a better illustration of the Washington cartel than the charade we are engaged in this evening. This deal that we are here to vote on is both shockingly bad on the merits, and it is also a manifestation of the bipartisan corruption that suffuses Washington, D.C.
Rock Talk.
Grok Talk. Brought to you by CNHT, Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, bloggers at granitegrok.com. Check us out online at granitegrok.com.
Yes.
How about that?
And I just renewed the domain name, so we won't lose it.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah, that would kind of totally suck.
603-715-9689. This is your last chance to flash and light us up.
In 2015.
Make Ed Lasky do it again.
Right.
More for your dollar, Ed Lasky.
The Clash of the Cuban Titans. I wrote the piece originally, Choque de Titanes Cubano, a couple of weeks ago because there was a piece run about the Capitol Hill staffers who had voted, Democrat and Republican staffers, and the overwhelming majority of them believed that Rubio would be the party's nominee. So that's kind of the finger in the wind of where the establishment mind is at. On the other side, it's very clear that Cruz has a superior ground game. He's done the 99 county pickup thing in Iowa. He's worked New Hampshire assiduously. He's worked the southern states. They're going to figure on Super Tuesday. He's laid the groundwork. He is rising in the polls everywhere, and he's dominating in Iowa, enough that he almost unsettled Trump into saying things that were not really good for anybody, especially not Trump. But so you've got these two rising stars, and in a lot of the national polls, they're kind of running neck and neck in the low teens and heading upward. And we talked about suicide bomber Christie in New Hampshire possibly derailing Rubio, but by and large, they're rising steadily. So there at the debate, we had the chicken hawk and the Reagan basically going at each other. Rubio believes that we should have the surveillance state, that we should be full-boat Patriot Act, and that we should be into military adventurism. He actually supports the idea of regime change in countries that are basically against us. And if you look at the history of that, how'd that work out for us? It didn't work that well in Iraq because unless you're prepared to do a long-term exercise in implanting a constitutional republic, which basically means being an occupying force until they give up, kind of like Sharia wants to do to us, it's not going to work. As soon as you turn your back like Obama did, it blows up. How'd Libya work out for us? Wonderfully, didn't it? Completely destabilized a regime that had been in fear and trembling of the United States' potential use of power and would have simply gone along to get along, in spite of not being very nice at home, just blew up and the place is a complete failed state. How'd Syria work out for us? Feeding this group of rebels or that group of rebels or the other group of rebels. It's got a bunch of rebels killed. It's got some of our people killed. It hasn't gotten Assad out of there, and it hasn't made anything better. And there's one thing about the Middle East that you have to understand. These guys are nasty. They repress their own people, but they're largely secular. Under Saddam Hussein, there was a Christian community in Iraq, which has shrunk dramatically since the Shiite power structure, since the government has gone largely Shiite with guidance from Iran. In Libya, the Christians are being chased out. In Egypt, where we attempted to do regime change, the Muslim Brotherhood made sure that the Christians were persecuted. In Syria, Assad's a nasty little weasel. That doesn't alter the fact that Christians are fleeing now, since the pressure has been put on Assad, rather than before, when the pressure was not on Assad. We have done nothing good anywhere, and for somebody to stand up and say they're for adventurism makes no sense whatsoever. And he was attacking Cruz for daring to suggest that the American Freedom Act or something that him and Mike Lee proposed, which would have dialed back the mass data collection, the mass metadata collection, but made it easier to issue warrants to go after specified people, regardless of whether their phones were home lines, cell phones, burners, Skype. So in other words, broaden the range of phone types that you could go after, but shrink the range of people you could go after to real targets of interest. And he and several others piled on Cruz for daring to defang our intelligence collection. I don't think they did. The beautiful thing was that this was one of the best debates Rand Paul had, and he actually piled on with Cruz against Rubio. But you got to see who the warhawks were. On the junior stage, Lindsey Graham was close to being wild-eyed and frothing at the mouth over wanting to go places and kill people and invade stuff. John Kasich, too, wanted to eavesdrop on everybody's family to make them all safer. Christie's just a big fat policeman. I didn't even include him in the group. But so the Cuban Titans were going after each other. They were going after each other good style, and give or take the little arcane twist on whether or not trying to poison pill the Gang of Eight legislation meant that Cruz might have been for amnesty, sort of. I think that Cruz got the better of the argument by a long way. But it was certainly, these two see each other as the existential threats to their rise, and they're going at it.
Isn't it interesting that a lot of the objections to the Patriot Act and some of the other things were the warrantless, the FISA courts, essentially warrantless surveillance.
Yeah, and don't forget some of the other stuff, like they can go into bookstores and demand a list of what you bought, or libraries.
Yeah, there was a lot of things about it, but and here are all these moderate Republicans defending. I mean, if I didn't read what Cruz proposed, but the idea of returning it to a warrant, which is required constitutionally for anything where you want to search or seize, I mean, that is the constitutional solution. At least it's a step in the right direction. I mean, if you wanted to get from A to D in the scope of this huge bill and all these regulatory things, you kind of can't. It's hard to go from A to D. It really is. As nice as it would be to have somebody just come in and go, "This is all garbage," that's an improvement. And warrants. How can you just?
The problem is that we have shifted from being constitutionally based to expediency based, regardless of what it is or what it's for. We've gone past the idea of the means is not the end. We've now gone to the end justifies any means that we want as long as it sounds halfway decent.
And including keeping you safe involves spying on you all the time and restricting your freedoms.
Yeah, and the problem comes back.
And it's for your own good. It's for your own security, except, and this ties into the gun thing, nobody's under any obligation to protect you no matter what they do.
Yes.
Right. And that's the thing. I keep pointing this out. I keep writing it. I keep saying it. And it really comes down to, if you are ignorant of what the fundamental processes of your civics lessons, then anything is okay. It's sort of co-joined to that idea: if you don't believe in God, you're willing to believe in anything. And indeed, you will believe in something. It's just not God, but that will become your God. And if you don't believe in constitutional process or in due process, like Kelly Ayotte voting to support this no-fly list without due process. So here we've got a lawyer who is basically disavowing that which he used to do, which is follow due process. And
in conjunction with the data collection, I think people fail to understand that, in New Hampshire we have some very specific laws about Easy Pass cams and how long that data can be stored and for what purpose and how fast it has to go away. So those laws are pretty restrictive, and you can only use transponders for that purpose, and you can only hold that data for a specific amount of time, and then boom, gone. Can't keep it. Now, if you're doing mass data collection and you're a government, and governments have enemies, domestic and foreign, you're going to keep as much of that data as you can in a format that allows you to search it for whatever purpose you desire at whatever point in time after you've collected it.
Correct.
So now you've got people permitting mass data collection indefinitely, and you've seen what the Obama administration uses it for. They attack private business owners. They give it to third-party NGOs to attack private people and citizens, intimidate and suppress. That is what happens if you allow it without warrant and without a paper trail.
Right. And that's what this bulk metadata is. Why it is so. Dear me.
Disturbing.
It's disturbing. Yeah, exactly. But it undermines the whole concept of the Constitution, and because they've got that data, if somebody you spoke to a couple of years ago that you thought was just a regular guy turns out to be a major criminal, turns out to be a terrorist, they've got the data going back years linking you to that person, and all of a sudden you become a suspect or a person of interest when you had absolutely no clue.
And it's data that other people can hack, so there's another thing.
Yeah.
Right. I think I'd rather trust Verizon to keep my metadata safe than the government. And that is actually the point of the bill that Cruz and Lee proposed, which is you let the phone companies keep the metadata, and when you have a warrant and you say, tell me who this guy's been talking to, and retrieve as many of his text messages as you can, then you have probable cause, you have a warrant, and the phone company has to cough it up.
Yeah, but, there's also the two-facedness side of this as well, because if there's a data breach at a private company, the feds come all down upon them in all kinds of fines. Now you look at the OPM data breach, the Office of Personnel and Management, where millions upon millions of people's IDs and personal information, some of these top-level type folks and special operators, their lives are at risk now. Nobody's been canned. Nobody's been disciplined. Nothing has happened. So we see the double standard of private companies, you will get screwed over royally for doing a bad thing. But if you let millions of gallons of wastewater from a gold mine go downriver by the EPA and one of its folks, nothing to see here, folks, except it's gold for a while.
Yeah, so that's the interesting two different types of government leak there. The EPA leak,
deliberately done,
due to incompetence, and nobody got canned. Now, if you leak something that the government actually thought was secret, i.e., not your personal information, they don't care. If you leak something that maybe is revealing about a key government figure, all of a sudden there's an investigation, or all hell breaks loose, like Scooter Libby for saying something that was.
I got a better one for you.
Go on.
Remember when Obama was first campaigning for the presidency and he met up with Joe the plumber and he made that statement of, well, it's better when the wealth is spread around, and Joe the plumber kind of went after him because, here's a guy.
And then he got investigated by the IRS.
No.
Every
What was
Democrat
worse?
in Ohio went after him.
No, not Ohio. Illinois. They all went after these private databases, which by law should not have been searched. And people from all over the Illinois government were going into areas that
Why
they had
Illinois? He lives in Ohio.
No, it was Illinois, I thought.
I thought it was Ohio.
Absolutely.
Well, Ohio then.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. The state
doesn't
doesn't
really
matter.
It doesn't.
But the bad thing is that people from within the government, Democrat participations, they went after Joe the plumber and leaked all this stuff.
Yep.
Now, only to my remembrance, only one person, some supervisor at the DMV, got canned for that. But there were a bunch of these people going on trying to figure out who is this guy that just sassed our nominee.
Yeah, they were. And it's like, whether it was Ohio or not, it's not the point. But, the Democrat operatives in government all went after him and in the press to try and make him out to be a bad guy, a subversive, a criminal, somebody who should not be believed. Whereas Joe had simply exposed the fatal flaw in his argument. The one guy that's still alive that really amazes me?
Who?
George Stephanopoulos. Do you remember in that debate where he asked Obama that question about his illogical move to raise capital gains because it would reduce government revenue? And Obama said it isn't about the revenue, it's about the fairness.
Was it Steffi?
It was Steffi. How dare he ask that question? How is he still alive?
Because
it was good for Hillary and bad for Obama at the time.
Correct.
That's why he's still alive.
Correct. Yeah, there's no better example of a Democrat with a byline than George Stephanopoulos doing what he does.
Remember those posters of PayPal? Yeah, Stephanopoulos donating to Hillary and pictures of him smiling with HRC. That's HRC, it is.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, he's a pawn. So anyway, we have about 30 seconds left before our 2015 season comes to an end. We are off the next 2 weeks. We will be back the second Saturday in January. And I have no idea what I will do I have 2 weeks of vacation. I will probably be retooling some things. And we'll see what comes out the other end when we get on the other side.
Great. And meanwhile, let's burst into song. We wish you a Merry Christmas.
We wish you a Merry Christmas.
All right. A Happy New Year.
All right. Well, long year. This is year 3. We're in still, coming up on year 4 in April. So thanks a lot for listening. We will try to make the program newer and better, and it'll still be Grok Talk. So whether you love that or hate that, too bad. That's just it's free. You don't have to pay for it. So we'll see you next year.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrok.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter. In accordance with Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, some of the material in this program is used under the fair use provision of federal copyright law. Sound effects were either created by the producers of the program, found free in the public domain, or are covered under Attribution 3.0. Most of the music on this program comes courtesy of Creative Commons licensing from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.